What if everything you thought you knew about your family was a lie? Imagine the people you love the most, the people you trust unconditionally, suddenly becoming strangers overnight. That's the reality Prince Harry is facing right now. And it's not some Hollywood drama or tabloid exaggeration. It's real. This is the moment where a young man who once carried the world's expectations on his shoulders has discovered a secret that could shatter the very foundation of the British monarchy. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. For decades, whispers circulated behind palace walls, hushed conversations in gilded rooms. A glance here, a pause there. The kind of tiny, almost imperceptible moments that, when strung together, form the fragile web of suspicion and doubt. Harry, like anyone would, felt it. He couldn't put it into words. Something about his relationship with King Charles felt off. A distance, a tension, an invisible barrier he could neither cross nor ignore. For years, he pushed the thoughts away, burying them beneath protocol, smiles, and royal duty. But secrets, no matter how deeply buried, have a way of clawing back to the surface. And sometimes, they arrive with the force of a storm. It began, as so many things do, quietly. An envelope, sealed, discreetly delivered. Not through the usual channels of palace mail or security, but directly. Harry knew the sender immediately. He had been waiting for this moment. Yet no amount of preparation could make it feel less like a punch to the gut. The envelope contained DNA results. Cold, clinical numbers and letters on paper that would unravel a lifetime of assumptions in one shocking instant. And in that room, alone, Harry stared at the results, heart hammering, mind racing. Could it be true? Could the man he had called his father, loved, respected, even feared, actually not be his biological parent? The first thought that struck him was disbelief. That's human nature, isn't it? When reality becomes too brutal to process, your mind fights back. Denial, confusion, anger. Harry's hands trembled as he read the confirmation again, just to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. The test didn't lie. King Charles was not his father. Not biologically, not genetically. A lifetime of images, memories, and stories he had built around that relationship suddenly felt unstable. Like sand slipping through fingers. And then, almost immediately, another name surfaced in his mind. The name that had floated on the edges of tabloid speculation for decades, dismissed by the palace and the public alike as gossip, rumor, or myth. James Hewitt. The cavalry officer, the controversial figure, the man whose affair with Princess Diana had once captivated headlines and scandalized the nation. Could it really be? Could James Hewitt be his biological father? The revelation was both electrifying and terrifying. If it were true, everything about his identity, his place in the world, and his role in the monarchy would have to be reevaluated. Now imagine being Harry in that moment. The walls of his childhood home, an environment designed to shield him from scrutiny, suddenly seemed like a cage. The very people he had relied on for guidance, love, and protection had become actors in a story he didn't fully understand. What do you do when the foundation of your family collapses under the weight of a single scientific result? How do you navigate a reality where the person you trusted most turns out not to be who you believed? This isn't just a private crisis. It's public. The British monarchy is no ordinary family. Every move, every word, every reaction is under constant surveillance. Cameras, microphones, reporters, social media, all watching, waiting, dissecting. The stakes are unimaginable. If Harry's secret were to leak tomorrow, it could spark chaos in Westminster, reignite decades of tabloid frenzy, and send the monarchy into a new era of scrutiny and scandal. But Harry isn't just thinking about the headlines. He's thinking about Meghan, about Archie, about Lilibet, about the safety, stability, and happiness of his own family. Because unlike palace protocol or public relations, these results affect lives in ways no press release ever could. And yet, even as the shock sets in, the human side of Harry surfaces. This is a man who has lived under extraordinary pressure, who has faced bullying, judgment, and relentless scrutiny since childhood, who has battled inner demons and public criticism, who has built a life with Meghan away from the relentless gaze of royal obligation. And still, nothing could prepare him for the emotional tsunami that arrived with these results. There is grief here, yes, but also a deep, raw rage. A sense of betrayal. How could a truth like this have been hidden for decades? Who knew? Who kept it quiet? And why? But let's pause for a moment and consider the broader picture. Why does this story matter now? Why is the world watching, or soon to be watching, Harry's every move? Because it touches something primal. Family, identity, betrayal. The very idea that someone's life could be constructed on a lie. The DNA results don't just challenge Harry's relationship with his father. They challenge the narrative of the monarchy itself, the succession, the line of inheritance, the public trust. If Charles isn't Harry's father, what does that mean for the title, for the estate, for centuries of tradition? Suddenly, the stakes are no longer personal, they are historic. And yet, amidst all this drama, there is an undeniable human story, one that transcends crowns, palaces, and protocol. Harry is confronting the deepest questions of identity. Who am I? What does family mean? Can love survive betrayal? These are questions anyone can relate to, even without a title or a palace. They are questions that hit at the very core of human experience, of trust, and of personal truth. And as we walk through this story, chapter by chapter, you will see not just a prince, not just a scandal, but a man facing an impossible reality with courage, fury, and heartbreak. Now, here's where it gets even more gripping. Because the results were only the beginning. They were the spark. The explosion came later. The confrontation. The whispered conversations behind palace walls. The strategic moves with Meghan. The careful navigation of public exposure versus private sanity. Every decision Harry would make from this point forward carried consequences far beyond his imagination. And the people he once considered family? They were about to become strangers, adversaries, and, in some ways, part of the audience to his unfolding drama. You might be wondering, how does someone process a revelation of this magnitude? How does one navigate the collision between duty, love, and personal truth? Imagine the pressure of being watched, judged, and speculated upon by millions, while simultaneously facing the ultimate personal betrayal. Every phone call, every glance, every whispered conversation carries weight. Every misstep could become headline news. Every word could be dissected and weaponized. And yet, Harry has to make decisions. About loyalty, about identity, about his own life, that will reverberate for generations. And as we follow him through this labyrinth of secrecy, betrayal, and revelation, one thing becomes clear. Nothing will ever be the same. Not his life, not his family, not the monarchy. The world as Harry knew it has shifted in an instant, leaving him to navigate a new reality where every truth is questioned, every relationship is tested, and every step is fraught with uncertainty. But here's the most important question. When Harry finally confronts the people involved, when the results, the secrets, and the whispers collide, what will happen? Will there be reconciliation, anger, or something far more explosive? And how will the public, the monarchy, and the world at large respond when the full truth emerges? Because make no mistake, the story doesn't end with the envelope or the DNA test, or even the realization that James Hewitt may be his father. That's only the beginning. The real drama, the confrontation, the fallout, the unraveling of relationships, has yet to come. And when it does, the consequences will ripple far beyond palace walls, echoing through history and leaving no one untouched. So as we begin this journey, keep this in mind. What you are about to hear is not fiction. It is a revelation, a saga of betrayal, identity, and courage, a story that challenges everything we think we know about family, truth, and loyalty. And as you watch, consider this. If you were in Harry's shoes, what would you do? How would you confront a truth so devastating, so fundamentally life-altering, that it could change the course of history itself? And just when you think you've grasped the magnitude of what Harry is facing, remember this. The reactions, the decisions, and the revelations that follow are nothing short of seismic. The next chapter, the moment he steps out from the shadows of doubt and into confrontation, will change everything. But what comes next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the very people who are supposed to guide you, protect you, and love you the most are the ones whose words and actions make you question everything about yourself? That was the reality Prince Harry faced long before any DNA tests, long before envelopes arrived, long before secrets came crashing down like a storm. The seeds of doubt had been planted decades ago, quietly, almost imperceptibly, in moments both small and seemingly insignificant. And yet, when the truth finally revealed itself, Harry realized that those small moments had been warnings all along. From the very beginning, life as a royal carried its own unique pressures. Imagine growing up with the weight of history on your shoulders, with cameras capturing every stumble, every smile, every misstep. But for Harry, the pressure wasn't just public, it was deeply personal. The relationship with his father, King Charles, was complicated from the start. Not distant in the obvious way, but in subtle ways that gnawed at him. A tone in a conversation, a fleeting glance that lingered just a second too long, moments when Charles's attention seemed elsewhere, even when Harry desperately sought connection. It's hard to explain these nuances to anyone outside the palace. They are small, almost imperceptible fractures in a relationship that is supposed to be unbreakable. But cracks, no matter how small, always widen over time. Harry often tried to ignore the feelings, brushing them off as childish misinterpretations. After all, he was a prince. He had duties. He had expectations. And he had to maintain a public face. But deep down, a gnawing question lingered. It was never spoken aloud, not even to himself at first. Could there be something different about me, something that makes me not fully belong? It's a terrifying thought, isn't it? To grow up surrounded by family, tradition, and history, yet feel like an outsider within your own bloodline. And yet, that was Harry's reality. He felt it in subtle ways. A hesitation in a compliment, a pause in conversation, a distance that no words could bridge. Some of the doubts came from overheard whispers. The palace is a labyrinth of secrets, and in every corridor, in every gilded room, rumors can echo in unexpected ways. Staff would murmur, distant relatives would comment under their breath, and the press, the press, never truly sleeps. Harry grew up learning to filter what he heard, to weigh each fragment of information carefully. But some things were harder to ignore. He noticed the way certain adults would exchange glances during family gatherings, as if they were holding back a truth they could not voice. He noticed the timing of certain interactions, the subtle shifts in behavior, the odd coincidences that seemed too pointed to be random. It's easy to dismiss these things as paranoia. Anyone would. But when they pile up over decades, they start to form a pattern. And patterns, Harry realized, rarely lie. Even as a teenager, he felt the subtle sense that his place in the family was different, that the expectations, the love, and the trust that bound the royal family together were unevenly distributed. Harry could see it in his brother, Prince William. The bond between William and Charles seemed effortless, instinctive, deeply rooted. It was the kind of bond that required no explanation, no negotiation. And yet, with Harry, there was always a shadow of distance. The contrast was impossible to ignore, and every time he compared himself, every time he measured himself against his brother, the seed of doubt grew a little more. It's important to understand that these doubts didn't manifest in overt conflict, at least not at first. Harry wasn't confrontational by nature, and he learned early that the royal system rewards discretion, politeness, and quiet endurance. Expressing dissatisfaction or suspicion was not just discouraged, it was dangerous. The palace is a world where appearances matter more than truth, where perception is reality, and where a single misstep can haunt you for life. So Harry internalized his feelings, compartmentalizing them into a private corner of his mind that he rarely allowed anyone to see. But internalized feelings have a way of growing louder with time, gnawing at your sense of self, challenging everything you thought you knew. Some of Harry's doubts were rooted in moments of emotional isolation. Even surrounded by people, he often felt profoundly alone. Think about it. A child growing up in a gilded cage, constantly observed but rarely understood. Teachers would comment on his energy, the press would write about his mischief, his peers at school would whisper rumors fueled by curiosity and gossip. And in the midst of it all, Harry felt the absence of the kind of unconditional acceptance every child deserves. That absence, subtle as it was, fueled the question that would haunt him for years. Who am I really, and where do I truly belong? It's tempting to chalk these feelings up to youthful angst or the challenges of royal life. But there was more. There were hints, small and seemingly coincidental, that pointed to something deeper. Stories that didn't quite add up. Memories that seemed inconsistent. A photograph here, a comment there, fragments that didn't fit together but seemed to suggest a hidden narrative. The human mind is remarkable at noticing these anomalies, at feeling when something is off even if it cannot be fully explained. And Harry's mind, sharpened by decades of observation, couldn't ignore them. Perhaps the most haunting moments came in private. When no one was watching, Harry would replay conversations, analyze expressions, and search for meaning in the smallest gestures. He became attuned to subtleties most people overlook. A pause in speech, a hesitation in tone, the choice of words. Every detail became a potential clue in a puzzle that had no solution yet. And in those quiet moments, alone in his thoughts, the idea that something was fundamentally different about his family became not just a suspicion, but a persistent, gnawing reality. Imagine carrying that kind of doubt for decades. It's not just a question of biology or lineage, it's a question of identity, of love, of trust. Harry knew that the answers he sought could never be found in public statements, in media portrayals, or even in royal protocols. The answers lay somewhere hidden, obscured by decades of secrecy, rumor, and carefully maintained appearances. And as the years passed, the question became less about curiosity and more about necessity. Because living a life built on assumptions is exhausting. Eventually, the truth demands to be confronted. By the time he reached adulthood, Harry had developed an almost instinctual awareness of these dynamics. He could sense tension in a room before it manifested. He could read subtle expressions with uncanny accuracy. And he understood, perhaps better than anyone, the delicate balance between revealing too much and protecting oneself. That awareness, born of necessity, would later guide him in ways that no one could predict. Ways that would shape the dramatic decisions he would make once the DNA results arrived. But even in his most private reflections, Harry never fully anticipated the scale of what he would discover. The doubts that had shadowed him for so long were just the beginning. They were the cracks in the foundation, the hints of a truth that would, once revealed, upend his entire world. And yet, despite the fear, the uncertainty, and the overwhelming stakes, there was also a flicker of hope. Because hope is what drives us to confront uncomfortable truths. It is what gives us the courage to face betrayal, to demand answers, and to seek clarity even when the consequences are unimaginable. And so, the stage was set. The hidden doubts, the whispered rumors, the subtle fractures in his relationships, all of it was converging toward a moment that would change everything. The moment when decades of uncertainty, speculation, and emotional turmoil would collide with undeniable truth. The moment when Prince Harry would have to confront not just the reality of his lineage, but the reality of the world around him, and the people he had once trusted most.